was several months back, October of 2020, in the heart of the pandemic, that I decided, you know what? I'm starting this new business. What can I do but connect with interesting people? So I found myself on LinkedIn doing quad meets, and these were networking sessions, 30 minutes, 3 times a week. I was doing this, and I got to meet people from all over the world and learn and connect. But there was one particular quad meet session in October, and it was one that stands out, where there were 3 participants. And there was this young woman that just glowed and was extraordinarily interesting and just spoke about talent. And I thought, that is a person that I want to reach out to and have a connection with and a communication with. So I basically stalked, in a very positive, professional way, this wonderful woman, Elvira Chang, and I messaged her via LinkedIn, and I said, I would love to connect with you. Could we do a virtual coffee? And she said, sure. What transferred is now this amazing professional friendship where we committed as 2 women who have their own businesses, who work solo. We want to be each other's team. So we have met since October once a week to encourage each other, to help each other, to answer questions. And what I found out really quickly is that Elvira has these amazing talents that were sort of a void or a weakness or an area for growth for me. And we would help each other out, whether it was technology, insight, strategies, communication, etc. And so I'm excited to introduce to you the amazing Elvira Chang. And before I do that, though, just a short snippet about what I do is I protect audiences from boring speeches. And how do I do that? Through my 3-month, 6-month, and 12-month communication coaching program, whether for an individual or teams. I also do engaging workshops and certified in temperament theory, where I help you understand how you work, communicate, and lead. And what I'm excited about is my interest in understanding self. Plato said, know thyself, is something that Elvira, I think, holds true and finds to be very interesting as well. So I'd love for Elvira to introduce herself and tell a little bit about how she came to be where she's at today.
Wow, thank you so much, Tina. I'm feeling a little bit of pressure after that introduction. I love the way she embellishes how we came together, but I've certainly appreciated our professional friendship, how it's come together. So first of all, I definitely want to thank all of you for coming today. My passion is really about getting people to see themselves in a different light, right? I'm looking to pull out what's natural about you. A little background about me. My background is actually in engineering. I worked in product management in the corporate world for 15 years. It just wasn't satisfying. I got to this point in my life where I'm like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. And I walked away without an idea of what was next, but I knew I just didn't want to do that anymore. And what always drew me to the projects I did or the people I talked to, it was always the individual. And that was the path I ended up following, and how I got into becoming a Gallup certified strengths coach, and really about what we're going to talk about today. So what I love about Tina and I coming together, right? She's all about communicating and expressing and connecting. And it's true what Tina said, we have very different strengths, but what drew us together is we have similar values, right? So Tina has this energy and this activator about her that I'm a little bit more laid back. I like to observe and kind of feel a little bit more comfortable, develop that relationship before I jump in. And what I'm looking for each of us on the call to do is really look into who you are and how do we draw out what's natural about you in your communication, bringing together what I do and what Tina does. So for today, we are talking about how to use your talents to connect and communicate. So Tina talked to you a little bit about who she is and who I am. What I want to do is open it up to the group at large. I want to know from you, what do you think of as talent? When you think of the word talent, what comes to mind? And definitely feel free to unmute and answer, or maybe you're looking at the chat. But my style is a little bit more discussion based, right? So I want to hear from you. What do you guys think talent is?
Something that a person is naturally good at.
Something that a person's naturally good at. Okay.
I believe it's something that beyond naturally good at, it energizes you, it feeds your soul. It it just kind of comes naturally, but it also makes you grow and reach out because you're putting money in your bank, your soul bank.
Absolutely. I love that. Okay. Some good answers so far. What else?
And Brett put in the
talent.
chat a proficiency or ability that can be put to positive use.
Okay. Ooh, we've got some cheaters here that know the definition of talent. What else? What else? Any other examples anybody wants to share? What talent is?
You already got such good answers. I can't think of anything.
Okay. Thanks, Erin. All right. So we've got, a little bit of what I wanted to do today is most of the time when I ask about talent, people are talking to me about artists or dancers or athletes or in Tina's world, speakers, right? Motivational speakers, maybe. But in my world, I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach. And I don't know if many of you have heard of StrengthsFinder or it's been rebranded to Clifton Strengths. But the way Gallup defines talent is it's a naturally recurring pattern of thought, feeling, or behavior that can be productively applied. We all know we have patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior that is not very productive, but we're going to focus on the ones that can be productively applied. So, and that's something I love what like Amy and Maggie and Erin were saying. We're looking beyond maybe some of the artistic things and what are those patterns that maybe a lot of times we overlook or take for granted, or we think everybody else can do it, right? So with this assessment that I use as like the foundation of the work that I do, this assessment categorizes you take an online assessment, there's 34 possible options, and the assessment gives you your top 5. And just to give you guys some examples of what your possible outcomes could be, one of them is, let's say, empathy, right? So, I mean, how many people really think of empathy as a talent? Some people think of it as, ooh, this is something I really don't want to share, or they feel like it's a soft skill or something that's not valued. But that natural way of thinking and feeling where you're able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and that colors how you do something is a talent. What about futuristic? Somebody who looks at a situation or a topic and thinks, where can this go? Where can it lead? Or, ooh, this is a problem. Where can that lead? So being able to quickly look at a topic and extrapolate where that goes, that is a talent. Even learner. Sometimes we put pressure on ourselves or on others. Well, if they just learn something, well, not everybody's energized by learning. And then there are others that are, lifelong learners, right? So I don't want to see their loans, in terms of being lifelong learners and how much they invest in their own education. So everything you guys said is directly on point. Why does it matter? Well, as Maggie was telling us, it's those patterns that are natural to you and they're going to energize you, right? And if you're energized, if you're being true to who you are, that's where you're going to be the most comfortable and allows you to be the most authentic. And this is something Tina and I have talked about in the past, especially when communicating with others. Can you guys imagine being in a conversation and you feel like somebody's telling you what they think you want to hear? Or they're telling you what they have to, but you could tell they really don't believe in it. They're practically cringing at telling you something. And can we have a raise of hands? Have you guys ever been in a situation like that? Yeah? Okay. So this is, again, going back to what I want to be able to pull together in this conversation today is I want you to be able to communicate in a way that's true to yourself. Even if you have to communicate something you don't want to, be true to yourself and how you do that, because that's what's gonna help you in that connection in your communication with others. So if we bring it back specifically to communication, again, your audience is going to get a genuine sense of who you are, but by you being comfortable, by you being in your natural environments that are going to help you thrive, it's going to allow you to focus on your audience, focus on your message, and focus on the interaction rather than, am I standing in the right place? Am I speaking loud enough? And those things are important, but again, you've got to be true to yourself. So let's take, for example, humor, right? So you might meet somebody and say, oh, I met somebody and they were really funny and smart, and we're gonna collaborate, right? So you tell this story and you're like, oh, okay, the person's funny or smart, but how are different ways that people could be funny? So can you guys tell me or give me some examples? What are different ways that people are funny? Different kinds of humor.
Self-deprecating is pretty common, I think, as far as like making someone else feel comfortable in the room and kind of going first at being able to laugh at yourself.
Okay, so taking one for the team to make the other person feel more comfortable. Okay, cool. Thanks, Brett. What other kinds of humor? How about spontaneous? Those of us who kind of play in the moment, right? We kind of use the circumstances of what's happening in the environment to make a comment. Other kinds of funny?
There's physical, or just the way people react, or their body language can, project what's going on and turn it to a funny humor, take the tension out of the room.
Absolutely, right? So yeah, that physical spontaneity. Yeah.
And I would say my son and we love to make a good pun and wordplay, and I find that to just be enjoyable.
Yeah.
We
absolutely.
would sometimes do like silly jokes or happy music and just start dancing too.
Absolutely. So mood breakers.
Yes.
Or mood setters. In a way, absolutely. So can you guys all feel how, like, depending on each person's answer, how it came up, we all felt a little differently. And there were certain types of humor that maybe we gravitated towards more than others. Can you guys kind of see that? Okay, so in terms of, here are some of the examples you guys were talking about, right? Nobody mentioned sarcasm, right? Like sometimes sarcasm turns me off a little bit. I get a little, protective here, but somebody's humor could be very dry, situational. You guys were talking about spontaneous, physical, somebody who likes to tell the joke and set the mood. Pranksters. What about those practical jokesters? You got to watch out for those. So now once we start getting a little bit more detailed here, we can start seeing that there's more flavor, there's more depth and color to the type of humor. To say that somebody's funny is not that it's wrong, but it's kind of incomplete, right? So whether we're talking about humor or we're talking about your style of communication, your natural talents, your natural way of thinking and feeling and seeing things is going to contribute to your individuality, and they're going to flavor how you're going to do something. So for those of you who know Tina well, and you kind of are used to her style versus mine, there may be some similarities, but you guys are already starting to feel some of the differences between us. And if I go back to the assessment that I base a lot of my work on, there are 34 possible talent themes that you're ranked for. And when you get your assessment, you get your top 5. Well, the chances of somebody else having the same top 5 as you is 1 in 33 million. So when I do workshops or I'm coaching somebody or I'm working with teams, nobody has the same results. And it's a very different experience when you're sitting there with your coworkers, your family members, your teammates, and starting to see, that's why I prioritize this or I value this, and that person seems to not care. It's not that they don't care, so they may not even see it, right? So part of our discussion today is I want us to be able to see ourselves clearly so that we can use that as our own superpower, as our own strengths. So can we think of some examples of some good communicators, whether it's a personal friend, a family member, or a famous person?
I can't help but think I was lucky enough to get to meet Maya Angelou and see her speak. She has this beautiful presence, rich voice, strength. And so I think about how her words come alive based on just her deep, strong voice, but also how she stands and her overall poise.
Wow. Wow. So even like the way she stands and her posture like made that difference. Other good communicators.
I agree with that. In high school, we had the poet laureate from Nebraska come one time and he read his poems. It makes such a difference because they're feeling it as they say their poems or their stories.
So, so can you tell me a little bit more about the feelings about how you felt?
It just made everything come alive.
Yeah. And it drew you in.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
I met someone at a networking event yesterday that's in charge of, like, it's the Nebraska Poetry Association and they have readings. And I'm like, well, that made me think I should go to one of those.
Very cool. So
In
not
a world
only
where we're trying to find more peace, wouldn't that be a great place to go?
very cool. So it could be that somebody that we meet or a speaker can even broaden what we're opening ourselves to, right? Any other examples of good communicators we want to touch on?
I worked in an academic setting for a psychiatrist for 4 years, and this woman always had a way. You knew what she wanted, but she knew that you were never going to get anything out of someone by putting him down. She had a way of talking to people that was always it was positive, and you knew what she wanted. Like, I mean, I knew once when she was upset with me, but she didn't yell at me or demean me. She just was very like factual about, this is what I expected or whatever. And, I think, our parents have yelled at us or someone's yelled at us. It's like I almost didn't know what to do. Like, oh my God, like usually people yell when they're not upset. I mean, and it didn't always work, but I just felt like she was always able to motivate people through positive things. Like, I don't know, always like some people you'll say in an email, this is the 3rd time I've told you this. And it's like, I never do that because I don't think it's effective. Mm-hmm. People don't care. Mm-hmm. And some people don't agree with that, but I don't think that's effective. And that was one thing I learned from her is to try to keep things positive. I'm not going to still have a lot of room for learning, but she always was pretty good at keeping things positive.
Yeah.
To motivate people.
So this is an example of a good communicator. It wasn't a famous person,
right?
With, and you felt that her effectiveness came from focusing on being on what's constructive.
Right. And I felt like she always got everyone's side of the story. And I mean, I'll be honest, there was one day that she was yelling with one of the other doctors in her office, and I just didn't know what to do because she never yelled. I mean, and I was like, wow, she's really upset.
Right. Well, and there are going to be situations that pull us out of our place of strength. But
right.
That's a great example of here's a person who acts differently than others and is able to keep the conversation on being constructive. That's a great example, Amy.
And I just think she had to be that way because to be effective as a female physician, you've got to be that way. So I have a lot of admiration for her.
Yeah, she found a style that worked for her.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if we think of, I'm going to go with famous people here, right? But it could be good communicators in our personal lives, right? You might look at these pictures and recognize some people, but not all, or you might recognize them all and have your opinions as to whether they're good communicators or not. But each of them probably evokes a different feeling, right? There's some people that you're really drawn to, others that maybe their style turns you off, another how they express themselves really interests you, and others you're like, I'm not really into that. But each of these, they have their own talents that they bring to how they communicate, and there are different words that come to mind, right? So Tina, I know you have an exercise about communication and identity.
Right. So I think it's important, as all of us are communicators, to think about what words would we use to describe our communication style. And I did this activity with my son spring semester when we were homeschooling during the pandemic, where it was an I am poem. And it helped reveal strengths and qualities and adjectives to describe him. But I did it along with him. And during that exercise, I realized, wow, this is helpful for me as a communicator to identify my strengths and capitalize on that, but also help my clients have a means to label what they are, who they are, and how they show up authentically. And so when I did I filled in adjectives like enthusiastic, another adjective, creative, or kind, thoughtful, wanting those strong relationships and wanting them a connection with other people. So what I'd like you to do for just a moment is to actually think of at least a couple of adjectives to describe your communication style, because that will affect and influence how you choose to show up. Now, granted, you're going to have different contexts, whether I'm doing and facilitating a in-person community creative drama workshop for youth. That's a very different energy and audience than if I'm going into a workshop for CEOs and teaching about temperament, or it's one-on-one with someone. So you do modify a little bit, but I think it's a very helpful insight to say, okay, what word or words describe me and how I use my voice, how I use my body, how I use words to connect with people. So anybody willing to share in the chat or out loud, what's a word that pops up in your mind that when you think of yourself and your communication style, how do you fill in I am?
Direct.
Okay, direct.
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet.
Empathetic.
Empathetic, that's good.
Enthusiastic and forceful.
Yes, another enthusiastic communicator. I like it. Forceful, that strength.
Approachable and safe.
Approachable and safe. I see Jude, and welcome, Jude.
Hi.
Your hand was up.
I would say for myself, high energy.
High energy, absolutely energetic. These are all good. And so I think it's a great exercise. Elvira, what's a word or two that you came up with over the last day or so when you were thinking about I am and your communication style?
Yeah, so as Tina and I were talking about this, the words that came to mind for me, what's important to me and when I communicate is to be inviting. I like things to be interactive, right? I forgot the second word. The first one was inviting. Oh, the second one was trustworthy, right? So in my top 5 talents, one of them is belief. So I don't do something unless I believe in it. And the other word that came to mind was meaningful, right? So I want conversations to be meaningful. So yeah, no, but I love this exercise because I do feel like not only does it help us have clarity as we're communicating with others, but also helps us connect to what's the standard, what are our goals in a conversation. Going back to what Amy was saying, how do I keep it constructive to what my values are in the communication, and what's my identity when I'm communicating. So I love that exercise, and I do feel that our talents do flavor what our adjectives that we come up with are. So as you can see here, some of the people, it could be thought-provoking or empowering or just they're intimate in their conversation. So I love your answers, guys. So one of the things that Tina and I were talking about was what's important in conversation, and definitely one requirement, as we keep talking about, is authenticity. So I went to Merriam-Webster, and what they said was to be true to one's personality, spirit, or character, to be not false, right? So to me, that translates to leaning into our natural patterns. In fact, our patterns are so natural to us, we just call them habits. We do them on autopilot. We don't even think about it. There's a tendency.
Can I build from that for a second, Elvira? I actually watched a TEDx talk this morning, and the speaker talked about authenticity as being not only what's your truth, your personal truth, but also what you love. And it's putting those two together.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. And there is a tendency to, maybe we feel that we're weak at something, right? Or we haven't quite found our voice yet. There's a tendency to want to emulate somebody else's style. I want to be like that. But what we find is it can be exhausting because it's a pattern that's just not natural to who you are. And it goes back to what we were talking about before, is it could be inauthentic. And we talked a little bit about this earlier. Sometimes we're in conversations where we can just feel from the other person, they don't want to be saying this, or they don't really believe in what they're saying, or they're just going through the motions, right? And when we're talking about communication or being an effective communicator, we do want to be clear. Being an effective communicator doesn't mean you're an effective communicator in all situations. There are going to be some situations where maybe it's just best to keep quiet, or maybe somebody else take the lead, or, you know, there's just a different style or approach that's going to be most effective, or as Amy was saying, more constructive in that moment. But what I do want to talk about is how your talents fuel your individuality and they flavor how you're the most effective, right? And it's almost like your little secret identity, because the way we describe our talents isn't something we wear on our sleeves. We don't, you know, one of the things that Tina has that I don't, she's very articulate, right? She could really draw a picture with her words. I'm much more of a feeler. You know, I'm much more, I think, in pictures, and I feel things. So sometimes I struggle to find the right word. So that's going to flavor how I do things. But for today, I want to talk about 3 variables that we can play with to help you with your connection and communication with others, right? So now that we've spent a lot of time talking about what is natural to us, you know, now let's think about the environments and the ways we put our content out there. So the first one I want us to think about is media, right? So there are different ways to get your message out there. So one thing to consider is whether it's text or graphics, right? Some people are going to be better at the written words, whether it's the email or the PowerPoint or their blog, or maybe they actually like printed books versus an online newsletter. Some people, I'm not one of them, but they're just, you know, their writing just flows, or the way they put their message together through pictures, it just, they can convey something visually that somebody else couldn't. So we don't all have to be speakers, right? Writing or graphics could be a way that we can play with media. Another thing is live events. And I think this is where Tina and I both kind of gravitate towards, right? We like the interactivity, right? Whether it's an interview, a conversation, a panel, a presentation where there's an audience, but there's a back and forth flow, right? Some of us, we're going to gravitate towards that because it energizes us to interact with others, and that spontaneity, right? Others, we're going to run from it, you know, unless it's very safe, very prepared. I know what the questions are going to be. This might not be the way we want to go. Audio. Some people, one of my best friends has an incredible talent with her hearing. I mean, she hears things in songs, and whether it's lyrics or styles, or I just don't hear it, you know. Some people are just, they're very sensitive to the flow of words or the use of words, right? So they're going to be turned on by the sound of something versus reading it or writing it, okay? And that last style is being video, whether it's something a little bit more polished, recorded, or edited. Now, you might look at the live events and say, well, that could be audio, or that could be video, or that could be turned into text or graphics. Absolutely, it can. But what are the ones you're gravitating towards, right? Because you might want to go to video, have that visual effect, but it's very prepared and edited, versus do you just thrive and come alive by the interactivity? So this is the first variable of what to play with. Are there any questions so far, or comments, things that you guys gravitate towards?
I'm thinking, as people are marinating a little bit on this, Elvira, when we first were getting to know each other, just how amazing you are when it comes to video recording and editing. That's something that you've trained yourself, and you did this YouTube channel challenge. And I just was amazed and impressed with how you were able to figure out and manipulate in a beautiful way these videos. Whereas for me, I enjoy, give me a topic. I'm going to get on my rooftop. I'm going to do it live, do it for 3 to 4 minutes or less, and have a nugget, and then boom, I'm done. And so I think that that speaks to talents as well as how you actually utilize the media, whether you manipulate or actually engaged with it, or you just allow it to happen the way it is.
Right. So whether it's the editor or the sound or whatever, those are tools, right? And our talents we're gonna gravitate towards different tools. You're absolutely right. But how well we know how to use those tools is gonna impact how we do something as well. Yeah, thank you. Another variable to kind of play with would be work style, right? So how do you interact, whether it's yourself or with others? So are you more of the creator, that you do everything on your own? You have the big picture and you're the one that's actually executing on it, or are you more of a contributor, right? Are you part of a team? Or are you more of a collaborator, somebody who maybe you're doing something one week and you're working with one person, and another week you're working with somebody else, but it's almost like you're harvesting content. There are some people, whether it is a YouTube channel or it is a blog, right? The way that they craft their style is they're not always creating the content every single time. I think of like a talk show host, right? They're not standing there and filling up their 30 minutes or 1 hour all by themselves. Every program, every episode is a different guest that they bring in, right? So there's different ways of creating content. Sometimes we think of crafting our message and creating our content. We put the burden completely on ourselves. I can't do this. I can't possibly come up with new content every week or every day. And there's different ways, and Workstyle is one of them. Are you doing it yourself, or are you more of a team player? Maybe you're not creating the content yourself. Maybe you're actually leading a team that's creating the content, right? Maybe you're more of the visionary, right? And you're pulling that team together. They're putting the pieces together, but you're driving it forward, right? So I talked a little bit about content collectors. I think of people who are woo, which is one of the talents in Clifton's strengths, those people who love breaking the ice and meeting a lot of people. I think of them as the old school, I think of Rolodex, right? Like they have a lot of contacts. They have a network of people. Those people, let's say if they had a podcast or a blog or a YouTube channel or something like that, I could see them easily having a network of people that they could be interviewing, and that's how they craft their content and communicate and connect with others. So first, we've talked a little bit about what style of media plays to you, to your talents, what work style fits, what you're most comfortable with. Are you a solo person? Do you like small, intimate groups? Are you more comfortable with people you don't know as well, but can work well together?
Elvira, do you think with these 3 different creator, contributor, collaborator, do you think that it's possible to have all 3 be strengths, or do you think you gravitate most likely to one, and then you can have aspects or a percentage, if you will, to the other 2?
Thank you, Tina. That's an incredible question. For all of these, it's possible that you are talented enough to do all of them. But I would say there's probably going to be 1 or 2 that you would prefer. That doesn't mean you don't do the other ones and that they're not an option for you. But again, what we're looking for in this discussion is what energizes you, right? So just because, let's say I'm a little bit more introverted. Maybe I like working things solo more. That doesn't mean I can't work on a team or I can't collaborate, but I'll probably re-energize when I get that alone time again. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the third variable I wanted to talk about was content. How are you actually shaping your content? And I feel like this kind of ties back a little bit more to what Tina was talking about earlier, as far as those words, those descriptors, what I consider more of identity of, excuse me, as you're describing what is your communication style, okay? So how are you framing your content or your message out there, right? So are you more informative? Are you somebody who's going to stick to the facts? And the way that you're putting your message out there is, I'm just getting the facts out? Are you more of a visionary, right? So I think of, again, that futuristic talent. Are you able to see where an idea or a concept or a problem can extrapolate forward? Are you telling that story for others in the form of where this could go in the future? Educational. Are you trying to teach others a concept and letting them absorb it as it makes sense for them? Inspirational, right? Not motivational, not are we trying to get somebody to do something, but are we speaking? I love what Maggie was saying earlier about speaking to your soul. She was talking about your soul, right? What is it that's connecting inside of you, that person maybe not doing something for you, but man, you inspired them to do something for themselves, you know? Entertaining. I love it when Tina's talking about storytelling, and especially her style, because I find myself to be a little bit more informational, educational, that kind of style. I want you guys thinking about yourselves. Tina has a way to do it in a way that's engaging, right? Again, she's so descriptive in the way she presents something. And even though it could be impactful, it's also entertaining, which is a nice combo, you know?
Well, thank you.
So this goes back to a little bit to what Tina was talking about, right? So it's not that you're picking any one of these and you're sticking to it, but what we wanted to talk a little bit about today was, here are some variables to play with, right? We have so many tools, so many possibilities out there. It could be overwhelming. So Tina and I kind of wanted to break it down into 3 categories of, if I think about, I need to get my message out, what is the best media to do that? And I can imagine some of you thinking, well, I have to do social media, or I have to do video because this is the way that the gurus tell me I have to do something. Can you imagine trying to do those videos and just kind of, it's very scripted and you're not really connecting, right? But if you're more of a writer or more about an arranger as far as layout, and that's how you're going to draw out somebody's emotion and connection, I would say go with that. Be the trailblazer and not do what that guru tells you, because you want to be authentic to you and you want to draw in the people that are going to resonate with what's true within yourself. So which media styles do you gravitate towards? What work style? You don't have to do everything yourself. You don't have to create everything yourself. Or do you like to? No, there's nothing wrong with that. So are you more of a solo person, or do you like working with others? Do you not like creating the content? You like leading the team? There's options there, right? And then as far as the content itself, how are you framing it? And to, as I put here, these are just examples. Like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Malcolm Gladwell. Mm-hmm. I'm just mesmerized at how he just pulls these details and the way he threads it together, and gets us thinking and questioning ourselves with these small little details that most people overlook. That is a talent, the way he pulls that together. So
well, I even noticed today, with my husband, the way he was talking about, my son got this brand new Nerf gun and it got jammed. And when something flubs or there's a challenge, your talent responds to that probably in different ways. My husband's like, yes, my father starts to work with it, play with it, manipulate it. And whereas John says, he's looking for the bigger hammer, just crash this thing or get a new one. And I'm like, let's explore this. Let's go slower paced, analyze it a little bit more, and maybe figure it out. And so I think that has something to say, not just about your media choices, the way in which you frame words and content, but then your work style and how you cope with stress and with, things and people.
There are so many things about that story that I love. So first of all, you're talking about here, we're coming across a challenge, right? So each of you were reacting. How do we deal with this challenge differently? You each went to your natural patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving, right? we're gonna deal with this differently. I think that's also a great example of how what's natural to us is not appropriate for all situations. Grabbing that hammer would not have been appropriate for
Anderson would have freaked out. He just bought it with his own allowance money yesterday.
but that's what we do, right? When we get out of our comfort levels, maybe we get worked up or we get angry or whatever it is, we default to some patterns that may not be constructive in the moment. So that story had so many different angles with which to look at. So any questions so far that you guys want to bring up, or comments, stories? All right. Okay, we'll keep going. So I'm just curious, and you can tell us in the chat, are you guys starting to maybe see some variables or some different ways that we've talked about that might help your communication a little bit more? I'll let you kind of jump into that with the chat, and Tina, feel free to jump in later if you read something there.
Sure.
That we can share with the group. So going back to, so I almost, I very much like people to kind of be able to digest something, but then thinking about how they could use it themselves. I tend to be a little slower. I don't immediately jump on something. I tend to marinate, right? So when Tina and I talked about those 3 descriptive words, it wasn't until days later when I'm doing the dishes that something like bubbles up for me. So at a minimum, what we want to be able to do today is plant some seeds, some ideas. So here's some examples, right? So for talent themes, somebody who their talent theme is adaptability, which is one that I have in my top 5, I like variety. And this goes back to what Tina was talking about earlier. Is it possible that you can gravitate to all types of media or all types of work style? Absolutely. Somebody with adaptability might get bored easily. So they might like doing a little bit of everything to kind of keep them on their toes, right? Keep them energized that way. Somebody who has belief, they're going to be more values driven, right? So if they're sitting in a meeting and the focus of the meeting is profit and sales and the bottom line, they may not be as engaged, whether it be as a recipient of the topic or speaking about the topic. But if they might be more engaged if we're talking about, let's say, company culture and what are the values we want to bring out, or what's the impact to the community or to the customers, right? Includer doesn't want anybody to be left out. So that might color their content, right? The way they shape their content, they might be very unifying in how they write or they talk about something. Or it could be that they tend to focus on maybe particular groups of people or an individual who might feel left out, right? So what they're doing is they're putting a spotlight on that so that nobody feels excluded. And as we look at whether it's media, social media, any of the content that we consume, I think you can start seeing how our talents or the content creators' talents contributed to the perspective that they took in that piece. We talked a little bit about this earlier. Their needs and their desires is about meeting new people. So immediately what I thought of as Workstyle, I can easily see them being a collaborator, right? Likely having a network and their content being more interview style. So examples based on talent combos. So for me, my top themes tend to be connectedness, relator, belief, responsibility, and adaptability. Because of my adaptability and relator meaning I like those intimate conversations one-to-one, I like live interactive events much better, right? I don't want to just tell you something. I want to hear from you what you're thinking, and then where's that back and forthness, right? Work style, because of my adaptability, I like variety. So I'm going to lean to a little bit of each, right? And my content, because of my belief and my responsibility, I want it to be meaningful work, things I believe in, things that I've done the work in the back end. So as a speaker, I want to be trustworthy to you, right? For Tina, these are her talent themes. What is your media preference, Tina?
Well, when I think about being strategic and futuristic and activator communication and ideation, all of that lends itself to live interactive conversations. That's my very top preference. So you can imagine during the pandemic, it's been very challenging for me. And that's why I loved your adaptability. That was with your top strength of helping me and teaching me the importance of just being adaptable, learning the tools, the different platforms, and taking on video and seeing the power of video, not only from a pre-recording to share out there, but also from doing webinars to doing Facebook Lives or other forms of information to share my voice and my face and my ideas. I also see the value in audio. I've always enjoyed in the past working on radio. I've done radio ads as well as radio interviews, and I find it as a great medium to connect content with people.
Yeah. And as far as work style, I know with, starting your own business and the pandemic, that's impacted you as well. What have you found as far as work style?
It's, during this time of being on my own, I think talent has really popped out where doing my own business, I've had to be super strategic, thinking of, I've tried to break down every 90 days, what's my ultimate goal? My first 90 days, just meet people, share what I'm doing, share my story. Next 90 days, okay, I tried some stuff, what's working in terms of sharing, marketing my business, and then looking towards the future and then doing the thing. And I love, obviously, communicating, sharing stories, but also those ideas as well. And so what I do have collaborators that I enjoy working with, you being one of them. Jude is here today. I've collaborated with her as well. But what I like to do first is sit down with myself and do that idea making and think about it, marinate on it. So then I feel like I can contribute to the greater good of the group or the other person if we're doing a webinar or workshop together. So that it's that activator in me that's like, okay, and strategic person in me that let's be smart with our time, work smarter, not harder. But I am a team player. I do see the value in that I love the creation process, but I see that big value of that when you get ideas and you work together, that other people have strengths that can definitely contribute to the team.
Right. So somebody like Tina, even if she had to communicate something like facts and figures and more fact-based, she'd probably find that thread of how do I make it into a story?
Absolutely.
How do I connect with people? How do I get these numbers to inspire them? Something, right? Because that is naturally the way that Tina leads, right? So thank you. And it's interesting because the pandemic did force you to kind of, I don't want to say pivot, but adapt, right? Adapt and like lean into what can I use? How do I make the most of this situation? Right.
And I figured out very quickly that media is my friend. How can I be a storyteller when nobody's listening? I mean, stories require an audience. And if I'm not going in person to events and doing workshops, I need to use this beautiful tool of technology, whether through Zoom or live events on social media, to get it out there, to inspire people, to educate people, to connect with people.
Yeah. So this is me in particular, Tina in particular. I'm looking at, this was just kind of an example I put together, but somebody who's an arranger, that person is looking at what is the most effective way of putting something together that's going to connect with the audience. So that person probably has a lot of variety in what media they could use because their talent is, how do I arrange this? Chances are they tend to be very collaborative. Tina, I believe there's somebody who's trying to get into the.
Yep, I just got him in.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. So when I look at their style, because they're an arranger, right? How do I put all this content together in a way that flows? They're likely going to be more collaborative. And because of input and context, input is almost like a collector of details and information or collectibles, people, but they're collectors. And context is always looking at history. How was it done in the past? What are the examples from the past? I can envision this person, their content being very fact-filled and maybe historical, but they find ways to tie that content together, right? So again, I can almost think like a Malcolm Gladwell. I wouldn't necessarily think these are his talents, but that example. So just to close off, I know we're getting a little bit close to the end, but I do a little bit of caution, right? We've spent a lot of time talking about getting in tune with who you are, right? What are those patterns that are natural to you, that really energize you? But that doesn't mean, okay, stay in your comfort zone. You know, I mean, the whole point is about growing and expanding. And one thing I'm really big on is stretching your talents and stretching your strengths, right? So today we stayed to basics, but I'm really about, okay, let's get to know each other. How do we use it? And then how do we grow from there? So it doesn't mean ignore evolving your knowledge or your skills or your strategy to improve your communication. So I definitely want to make sure we're not getting that message across, but how do we work together? How do you learn those things, practice those things, but still be authentic to who you are? So in summary, your talents are your natural patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving. Your talent combination, it is unique to you. So again, even if you took this one assessment and you got your top 5 results, the chances of somebody else having the same top 5 as you is 1 in 33 million. There's no way that any of us are looking at things the same way. And you might be thinking, you know, but I'm trying to present something in the way that the audience is going to, well, we can't necessarily assume what the audience is going to be drawn to. We can't go by averages or media or whatever. The point is, what is it that you're going to put out that's true to you, and finding that the people who are your actual audience that are going to resonate with what you're putting out there.
I want to share before you go on, if you don't
Yeah.
mind. Annette puts in the chat that her top 5 strengths are positivity, futuristic, developer, woo, and harmony. And recently she switched into a new role as a consultant in finance and accounting and HR. She's very left and right brain, but most people don't think of accountants as a woo. So I love that you're willing to share that, Annette, because that does break down our stereotype that we would think winning others over, but how lucky that organization is to have you in that capacity.
I don't know if a lot of people think of accountants being positive, right? So having positivity is another one. So number one, I love that you know what your talents are and that you were willing to share that, but also you're showing us that your talents don't dictate what you do in life. They may help flavor how you do it, but you can do anything you want. It's about leaning into those things in how you're going to do it. So thank you so much for sharing. Anything else you want to say in there, Tina?
Well, I think, Sandy's asking, where can we take the assessment? And we'll get to that, Sandy, for sure.
Yeah.
But I do think what I love is just that idea of, based on temperament and talent, that we have all kinds of healthcare professionals, but they add that different spice, that different intensity, that different insight, the different ways of connecting and problem solving creatively based on talent, based on temperament. So I agree with you 100% that you can lean into and try a whole, whatever job you want by using those patterns and thinking and feeling and behaving that's natural to you.
Right. And the people who tend to stand out are the ones who are different and are willing to lean into that individuality and ignore the naysayers, right?
Right. And Maggie puts in here, we also have learned skills that can be useful too. So it's building on talents. So I know for me, I've learned a lot from Elvira, just from that adaptability and how to take, just ask those questions, being curious and asking thoughtful questions to gain information to build on my talents.
And I'll expand on that, because I've done a lot of work in this area. In fact, I've actually met Gallup back in the 1980s and worked with them on the Strength Builder for a project in my marketing. I went to Lincoln, Nebraska and met them and everything. But we're oftentimes in roles and we're trained on things that aren't our natural talents, and they drain us. But then you learn them so well, and they're handy skills to have that you sometimes fall back on them. But as long as you realize that those aren't your natural talents that feed your soul and energize you, but they provide a safe place to go to help you. Like for me, organizing, writing an outline or something, that's not my skill. I'm a nonlinear thinker, but certain projects need that. So I'll often say, okay, I've got to sit down and make a list and put this together, and then I can set it aside because it's out of my brain, and I can get back into the futuristic ideation. That's it. I just wanted to contribute that. I've learned how to learn skills that aren't energizing and natural to me, but they're very useful.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Maggie. I think a lot of times we are either looking to be educated or trained in things that we feel others will find value in and will pay us because we're worried about paying the bills. But what ends up
or bosses send you for training in are your weaknesses, and you can send me to all the training courses in time management, but when I get into ideation, time goes out the window, and you have to just figure out how to offload that or let someone else, like have a partner or somebody help you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
They overtrain us in our weaknesses.
Yes. And then what do? We feel deflated and more weak, right? So I do want to move quickly because I know that we are at the 30 mark here. So just to summarize, guys, just trying to be authentic to who you are. That doesn't mean don't go out and get trained. Just don't go trained on your weaknesses. Thank you, Maggie. Don't go do that. Effectively using your talents will result in the easiest, most comfortable, and most authentic path to connect with your audience and effectively communicate your message. Nobody else is going to do it the way you are, right? So use that to your advantage. And definitely explore the variables that we talked about. Kind of play with them to kind of see what works for you, okay? As far as looking for more information, I know some of you probably have to drop off, but at a minimum, I wanted to get this slide in there. So whether you're looking for more information, want to talk more, have questions, look at programs, whether about communication, go to Tina if you want to learn more about strengths or Clifton Strengths, talents. I'm more than happy to help you with that. Tina, I don't know if you have time to stay on for questions. If people want to stay on, we can do that.
I certainly do. If there are questions, we both want to make sure that you get your questions answered. I do know that if you get on Gallup's website, you can take the Strengths Finder. I think that was the Clifton Strengths Finder was a question someone had in the chat. They wanted to know, how can I learn my strengths? And so you can get on their website, or you can email Elvira.
I was going to say, or if you contact me, I'm happy to directly get you there. So, either way works. So.
Yes, well, Danny, thanks for coming, and we appreciate you coming. And so just before are there any questions? I mean, we are here for you. Both of us offer coaching and workshops, and we want to help you communicate effectively or understand yourself. And so are there any questions for us at this time that you would like to learn more?
I think sorry, Elvira.
No, go ahead, Erin.
As a service-based professional, I communicate to a lot of different people, and I feel like I try to tailor it to how they want to receive the information. So is that, maybe I'm leaning into a strength of, I don't know, Elvira, responsibility or discipline. I don't know.
Harmony. So you're absolutely right. That's a great comment, Erin. So it goes a little bit towards, we try to predict what's going on in a situation, and we sometimes tailor our communication style to what we think somebody else wants. A couple of things could be happening there. Number one, we're looking at a situation based on maybe what we think or what we fear. So we might be creating a situation, misreading a situation. That might be one thing. The other thing is, and this is something I do in my work, is sometimes we use our talents. So because our talents are natural patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving, natural doesn't mean we always use them in the good way, like the hammer. Sometimes we use natural in a not so great way, and it actually is feeding our weaknesses. So when I look at the word talent, I see it as very neutral. And if you're productively applying it, it's a strength. If you are applying it in a situation that's not the right situation or not at the right time, not the right volume of talent, it's a weakness.
Well, and to build off of that a little bit is, your core belief affects and influences how you move forward, how you communicate. When you become stressed, you appear differently. And so stress does create words that maybe come out that you normally wouldn't say in a certain way, or how you would go about working and doing something also, just to sort of support what you were saying, Elvira.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. But so what I'm saying is, so Erin, could be a couple of things there. What I would recommend though is in a time like that, if you're unsure, it might be a good opportunity just to ask, right? Because even asking the question of like, I'm sensing this, can you tell me a little bit more of what you're concerned about or what questions you might have? You might be opening up the conversation, inviting more clarity, as opposed to having two people who are communicating who aren't necessarily being clear, right? It's almost like we're reacting to our fears rather than kind of dealing with what we have in front of us. And the harmony might be overacting of, I'm predicting a problem, I want to anticipate fixing it. So I'm just mindful of time. Any other questions? I'm happy to stay, or if you guys want to talk more about talents or strengths, definitely contact me, communication, contact Tina. But I definitely want to say thank you.
I know
doing stuff like this.
Yes, I know that Elvira is here. I am here. Definitely reach out to us, Tina B at tinabakehouse.com. And Elvira, you want to say your email?
Oh, absolutely. My email is last name, first letter, first name. So it ends up being Change. So it's Chang Elvira. Change at rivercoaching.com, river with a Y. So it's if you contact Tina or myself, we can always direct you to the other one. So I'm not even worried about that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming today. And remember to be you and be true.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.